Sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction always occur with the help of two germ cells. Female gamete and male gamete are these two germ cells. Two major processes occur in sexual reproduction, namely gamete formation and fertilization. What is gamete formation? The gametes are formed by meiosis, as we have learnt in last chapter. In meiosis, the chromosome number is reduced to half. Hence, haploid gametes are formed. And during fertilization, a diploid zygote is formed by the union of haploid male and female gametes. Then zygote divides by mitosis and embryo is formed. So why this sexual reproduction might have started in the process of evolution? Now we know that the surrounding environment is continuously changing, and for a species to maintain its existence, variations are necessary. Now in asexual reproduction, only source of the variation is inaccuracies in copying the DNA, because all biochemical reactions are always imperfect. So there are some inaccuracies occurring in them. Now the variation occurring due to these inaccuracies in biochemical processes is sufficient when the reproduction process is fast. That means when the organisms have simple bodies and they mature and be able to reproduce quickly enough. But during the process of evolution, the body design of organisms became more and more complicated. So the time to reach reproductive maturity was also increased. Hence the reproduction process was slower and slower. Now the variation occurring in these slower reproduction processes could not make up with the changing environment. So there was a necessity to bring the variation by some different source. Only inaccuracies in copying DNA was not enough for the variation, and that's why sexual reproduction was evolved. Now let us see what happens in sexual reproduction which gives the variation. First of all, sexual reproduction involves two parents, that is a male parent and a female parent, and it occurs due to fusion of male gamete from the male parent and female gamete from the female parent. Due to this, new individual has always recombined genes. Now we know that in the formation of gametes, these 2n chromosomes, they are divided into n chromosome, and this n chromosome, they are not just copied, but they are recombined and crossed over. So there is recombination and crossing over occurring while these haploid gametes are made. So each haploid gamete, that means male gamete, each haploid female gamete, they are unique. They are unique set of chromosomes. Each has undergone a different recombination, different crossing over, and when two such different gametes fuse together, they form a unique set of chromosomes. Hence the new individual, although it shows a similarity with the parents, but it has some characters different than both the parent, and this diversity is the most important benefit of sexual reproduction. It allows the species to adjust with the changing environment and sustain the existence of that species, and that's why sexual reproduction was evolved in the process of evolution. What would have happened if the male female gamete were diploid? In next generation there will be foreign number of chromosomes. In next generation there were 18, and like that the number of chromosomes will go on increasing, and that is not required, that is not useful. That's why haploid cells were evolved. What would have happened if any of the cell in nature had not been divided by meiosis? So without the meiosis, sexual reproduction is not possible. So if meiosis was not there, then this complex organism, they would have extincted from the earth, and only primitive organism could be living on earth, but for meiosis. Meiosis allows these variations, fusion of two different set of chromosomes. Now sexual reproduction occurs in plants as well as animals. So let us first see sexual reproduction in the plants. Flower is a structural unit of sexual reproduction in plants. Last year we have seen the classification of plant, and in that we have seen that Thallophyta, Bryophyta and Pteridophyta, they are non-flowering plants. So they do not bear flowers, and that's why they have to reproduce asexually. But gymnosperms and angiosperm, as we know, they are flowering plants, and flower is the structural unit of sexual reproduction. Flower consists of 4 floral whorls, one after the other. The outermost whorl is calyx, then we have corolla, androecium and gynoecium, arranged in sequence from outside to inside. So calyx is the outermost whorl, whereas gynoecium is the innermost whorl in the plant. Out of this, androecium and gynoecium, they are essential whorls because they take part in reproduction. Calyx and corolla, they are accessory whorl. They are responsible for protection of inner whorl. In addition to that, the calyx, it is green in color, so it can do photosynthesis and make energy, make food for the plant. Whereas the petals or corolla, they have attractive colors and fragrance. So they are used in attracting the insects which are useful in the process of pollination. So they are accessory whorl. They help in the process of reproduction, but they do not take part in reproduction. Necessary whorls are androecium and gynoecium. The members of calyx, they are called sepals and they are green colored. That's why they can do photosynthesis. Members of corolla are called petals and they are variously colored and also have the fragrances. A flower can be bisexual or unisexual. By the word bisexual, we mean that a single flower, it contains both essential whorls, that is androecium and gynoecium. An example of this is hibiscus. Then a unisexual flower, it can contain either male or female whorl. So a flower in which only androecium is present is called male flower, and a flower in which only gynoecium is present is called the female flower. Example of this such unisexual flower is papaya. Many flowers have stalk for support, and such flowers are called pedicel flowers, and means they are called pedicellate flowers. They can have this pedicel, so that's why they are called pedicellate flower. Whereas flower without stalk, they are called sessile flowers. Androecium is the main whorl and its members are called stamens. Then gynoecium is a female whorl, its members are called carpels. Members of gynoecium are carpels, and you can see it here in the diagram. And this diagram is also very important. In examination they may ask you to draw the parts of flower. So here you can see the androecium. It contains anther and filament. Anther contain pollen grains. You can see many androeciums present here, and each containing anther and filament. And there is only one, you can see, gynoecium. It contains stigma. It's a means during the pollination it becomes sticky, stigma. Then there is one tube called style which takes it to the ovary, and ovary contains the female gametes. So this is female reproductive part of the flower. So members of the gynoecium, they are called carpels. They can be separated or united. Ovary is present at the basal end of each carpel. A hollow style comes up from ovary. Stigma is present at the tip of the ovary. Ovary contains one or many ovules. Embryo sac is formed in each ovule by meiosis. Each embryo sac consists of an haploid egg cell and two haploid polar nuclei. Then the pollen grain from anther are transferred from the stigma, are transferred to the stigma. This is called pollination. The pollination can occur with the help of abiotic agents like wind and water, and biotic agents like insects and animals. Stigma becomes sticky during pollination. When the pollen grain fall on the stigma, pollens are germinated on the sticky stigma and they grow a long pollen tube, and two male gametes are formed. The pollen tube carries the male gametes. Pollen tube reaches the embryo sac. You can see the process here. Here is a stigma, it has a sticky part. Pollen grain has fallen on it, and after that it germinates and it creates a pollen tube through which the pollen grain are transferred to the ovary. In the ovary, one male gamete unites with the egg cell and a zygote is formed. Here you can see the zygote is formed. Whereas second male gamete unite with the two polar nuclei and endosperm is formed. You can see here are the polar nuclei and the male gamete is uniting and the polar nuclei is produced. The entire process happens here. And that's why it is called as double fertilization. Why double fertilization? Because fertilization occurs twice. One with the egg cell and one with the polar nuclei. Egg cell and male gamete, they form zygote, and the polar nuclei and the male gamete, they form endosperm. Now this transfer of pollen grain can occur in two ways. One is called self-pollination. Self-pollination is when only one flower is involved in that, or two flowers of same plant are involved. Means pollen grains are transferred from anther to stigma of same flower, or from anther to stigma of different flower of the same plant. This is called self-pollination. But in some cases, using insects, animals, water, wind, the pollen grain are transferred from anther of flower of one plant to the stigma of the other plant of the same species, obviously. That is called cross pollination. While discovering new high yielding and resistant varieties of plants, scientists bring about pollination with the help of a brush. Means they spray the pollen grain on the stigma of the other plant of the same species and do the hybridization. Take a suitable glass vessel like conical flask or beaker, add some garden soil and put some pulse grain into that, and you will see what happens to the seed. Ovule will develop into seed and ovary into fruit after fertilization. Ovule is developed into seed and ovary into fruit after fertilization. Seed fall upon the ground when fruit break up and they germinate in the soil under favorable condition. Zygote developed at the cost of food stored in endosperm of the seed, and thus new plantlet is formed. This is called seed germination. So in all, we can see that in the sexual reproduction of plant, the first step is pollination, that is transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma. Then we have fertilization, actually double fertilization, because it occurs twice, one with the egg cell and other with the polar nuclei, and the final step is germination. So like this the process occurs. So this is about the sexual reproduction in plants.